Good to go.
Thank you. Then I want to welcome everybody to the October 2022 meeting of Manhattan Community Board 1's Transportation and Street Activity Permit Committee. I'm Betty Kay, the chair of the committee. I'm joined by Jess Coleman, the co-chair, and by also our district manager, Lucian Reynolds. This meeting will be held by Robert's rules, so committee members will go before non-committee members, other CB members, as well as then the public. Everyone will be able to speak, so don't be concerned about that. I want to start with the agenda item, just to remind people, in case they are coming for the east-west bike lane to connect the Brooklyn Bridge and Hudson River Greenway, that this has been delayed until November 1st, which is the date of this committee's November meeting. So we'll be back to the first Tuesday of the month, which is our more usual schedule. So we will be starting actually with most of our time tonight on street co-naming application and criteria. And I've broadened it out, so we're going to take a bigger dent out of this task, which really needs to be done soon, because our year of taking time to do it is almost up. Then we'll take a quick look at some things with fiscal year 24 budget, but that's going to be much more minor. And I do want to be done by 7:20, so if everyone feel free to tell me to stay on time when that's needed. And welcome you to barge in. So street co-naming application, we're going to look at as well as the criteria for individual honorees. Keeping in mind, we've already looked at two classifications that people can apply under, those for historical places or events, as well as those for organizations. This will be the individual honorees, which is our last of our three categories. But then you'll see there are a whole bunch of things with the application itself that need to be rewritten and relooked at. I'm going to go to the next. And considerations to remind you what you're looking at when you're looking at these recommendations in all of these categories. These guidelines, the reason we're redoing this is to make them clear to the applicants, the committee members, so think of yourself, because we're making the selections for the community board, and importantly, the city council representative, who will get our recommendations, and they are the ones who vote, because it is city council who makes the decision up or down with accepting. It also is it clear about all the criteria, the procedures, and what is needed from the applicant. Look at it through the applicant's eyes. Is it going to be easy for them? Not be overly burdensome on those applicants to complete the application, which includes all the required supporting materials, which hopefully you're going to get to see tonight. That it also be measurable so the requirements can be judged and compared. That's more look through the eyes of yourself as a committee member and a CB1 member for taking a vote. So you can judge, do these applications live up to the requirements that they're supposed to meet in the application? And finally, is it manageable for the office staff to verify the information, including the supportive materials? We don't want to overly burden any of the stakeholders here in this process. Next one, and we'll start with the individuals. These are the existing criteria, so there won't be a lot of debate about these because this is what exists. This is what's being rewritten. And one, since some of you are on the phone and can't see the screen, a prospective honoree must be deceased, be a New York City resident or native, and or an individual of great significance to New York City. Have a minimum of 20 years of community involvement, or an individual whose death occurred under extraordinary circumstances of crime, accident, disease, social circumstance, or the death itself leads to a greater awareness within society of the cause of death and a concerted effort to solve the problem. If you found that confusing, so did I when I read it. So a lot of the changes here are more around the organization than simply the content. But I want to point out, prospective honorees must, and now it's a list instead of what criteria are to be met. The first one is a new one, and this was because of the comments in the past about how do we get some of the immediately just died sentimentality out of it and put a little bit of perspective of time in there. So this one is have been deceased for at least 50 years. 2, this is a rewrite and some combination. have been a person of great significance to New York City, a key person in an event of historical note that occurred in New York City and/or brought about significant changes through their 20 or more years of community involvement in Manhattan Community District 1. You'll notice here there are 3 different options that are listed because there's an or in there, and that the community involvement here is focused more on our district versus just in general. So those are the things we're going to be discussing. 3, have the reason for his, her, or their selection, because it can be more than one person, be closely associated with the street and block or corner that is being proposed for code naming. And I wanted to straighten this out because when we think of block, you think of from one end to the other, when in reality, it's a corner. They put us on one of the signposts at one end of the block or the other. So I think many of you will find it easier to follow if you think in terms of a corner. And the asterisks in here, what does a historical note mean? This is simply what was already written in the other one, in the existing. An individual whose death occurred under extraordinary circumstances of crime, accident, disease, or societal problem, and that death led to a greater awareness within society of that issue. Alternatively, a person that helped to solve the problem or issue might be considered. In case like with 9/11, the issue of terrorism became better known. So that's how that's tying it. So the and isn't as overwhelming as you think. It's merely saying that somebody who died, but is just a statistic, as sad as it is not exactly what we're looking for. There's got to be something of note that makes people, why there's a newspaper article about it. So I'm interested in hearing what people have to say. So I'm looking for hands.
I'm going to put my hand up. Let me see.
Sure. Well, you can just speak and then.
Okay, thank you, Betty.
You can go after.
Everything actually seems to be pretty, from my perspective, pretty reasonable. I just have one.
Sure.
In having been deceased for at least 50 years, I think that, in my opinion, that might be a really high threshold where maybe other family members or other community members might also be dead before they can nominate somebody who was heroic and a bonus to the community for at least 20 years. So I was wondering how other people feel. I feel 50 years is quite a long time. If for an unusually outstanding person that might be deserving of something.
Do you have a suggestion, or do you want to hear others speak first?
Well, I mean, almost. I don't want to. I want to make the analogy for like the Hall of Fame for sports things, even though it's obviously this is much. A death is much more severe. But like a 5-year waiting, like a waiting period, 5 years or 10 years. I mean, but I'd be interested to hear some other suggestions or opinions. I just feel 50 years is out of the ballpark because sometimes people forget history.
Okay, let's hear from others, because again, these people are supposed to be not just sentimentality, but actually have done something that is
No, I
a
understand,
little bit more
and so
long
that's
term.
so.
But that's how I
I
want people to think about when coming up with other numbers and
right. I just
responding
think
to
okay. So
Mitch's.
50 is to me is unreasonable,
Mhm.
but maybe 5 or 10 is unreasonable to other people. So somewhere, But anyway, thank you, Betty.
Yeah, no, let's hear what people have to say. Pat, since I called on you before, and then we'll have Cody after that.
Yeah, I was going to bring, that was my point, is that I think 50 years is way too long. I don't mind 20 years, having lived through 9/11, and it's now 21 years later. We all see what that span of time, what's happened in that span of time. And I think 20 years is a reasonable amount of time. You still have family members, hopefully, that are still alive, or the community remembers whatever the significant event is or how you contributed to the community. I just think 20 years is fine.
Great, thanks for giving a suggestion. And Cody?
I would just agree with both folks
You can't agree with both because they gave different numbers.
Oh, okay, then I would say 20 years, or I'm torn between 10 and 20 years. The reason why I say this is because, I was thinking as you were talking, I was watched the Dustin Lance Black documentary last night on HBO, and he was talking about Harvey Milk. Harvey Milk, who, was, I mean, of course you would name a street after, or a block after Harvey Milk, even though it was maybe 10 years, prior to what happened. I just think that 50 years is a really long time out. So
But you can live with 20, you could live with 10.
yes, 20.
Okay.
Betty, I could live
Yeah,
with that
I kind of
also.
agree with the 20 number, but I want to hear from other people specifically about the number and then other things that you want. But Jess and then Carrie.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I think I was gonna say 20 as well. I feel like 10, 5 or 10 might end up with us getting inundated with requests. It's like the thing we're trying to do here is try and not make this so open-ended that it's gonna allow just everyone to or just create an overwhelming amount of requests like you were saying before. And if there is someone that's an exceptional circumstance, it's not like the city council can't take it up on their own. So I think there's enough flexibility there with 20.
Yeah, no, I agree. And actually, Pat, thanks for the comment that puts it in perspective with 9/11, there, which is actually now going on to 22 years. The fact is there are a lot of board members, and that's taking only a small pool of people who act like it was yesterday to them, and it's certainly part of their collective memory. So 20 years isn't that long for us oldsters, at least.
Betty, I'm good with
Carrie.
that also.
Okay, then let's hear from Carrie.
I think the consensus is building around 20, and I would support that as well. My question is actually more technical. The list that you have, Betty, is 1, 2, and 3. Those are ors, yes?
They're ands.
Okay, so I think in the drafting, it should be and, have been deceased for 50 years and, right? Because otherwise it's unclear. The prior one had conjunctions in there. So I think if it's and, we should state it as and. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like,
Yes,
have
no,
been
I do.
deceased
Actually, I'm
and-
searching for my slides and I'm going to type it on.
Oh, okay. Because otherwise, if it goes through like this, I wouldn't want people to think, well, they've been dead for 50 years, and so therefore they qualify if they have to fulfill all 3 of these components. So that's, sorry for being the lawyer.
No, actually, we count on that, so. I just can't type.
We don't want this to be the subject of some crazy Neil Gorsuch opinion someday. So I agree with that.
Well, we strive for clarity, right? If the idea is to have proposed criteria that applicants can understand and abide by and apply and be clear.
Yes, and in fact, it doesn't show in real time the changes that I made. But in fact, I've changed 50 to 20 years and I've put in a semicolon with an and after the first and the
I have a
second
question.
item. Yes.
So have been a person of great significance to New York City. Do we need to kind of elaborate on what that means? Do we need to give examples?
No, that's kind of, this is one, and I guess that's part of the debate. Great significance, is that something that needs to be quantified in some way, or is that a matter of letting the person decide and justify and the committee to decide, do they agree?
Also, it says of great significance to New York City when actually we're naming a block or a corner for that person. So is it that they had to have been of great significance in our community and not necessarily affected all of New York City, or great significance on that block, like whatever occurred on that block? And why is that block being chosen to be co-named after this person?
Well, that they're going to have to define in number 3. But in terms of, and debate about great significance to New York City, because some might say, you know what, does it even have to be New York City? What about if they're a resident on that block and they did something, they invented the vaccine for COVID-19 at a time and their name is attached to it? I mean, so there are some people who might say, you know what, they don't have to be of great significance to New York City, at least not directly. Obviously, people who took the vaccine benefited, but it was done more at a federal level versus through New York City government or a New York City company.
But then, you know what I mean? Suppose on that block, they saved 3 children from a burning building. It's just that block. It's not New York City.
Well, we would still say that is related to New York City. Well, even me on a committee would say, if they did something, I don't know that I consider saving 3 children in a building anything other than their job and a little bit ordinary, as important as it is to the family. In the history of New York City, really. And that's why I said, leaving the terms a little bit vague, I think, is to allow the committee at the moment to make that decision. And then the full board can judge if they agree.
I agree with that, Betty.
Yeah, I don't think we can nail down everything. I just want to be clear enough that it's great significance, not just a member of the community, but let them take a shot at great significance in the community board to decide, do they agree?
Because then it's becoming a case-by-case basis, which I think is a good thing.
I think it's necessary at some point. And if it's too prescriptive, I'm concerned about the city council discounting, period. But that's why there's also 3 options here. And they don't have to meet all 3. That is an or within that second statement. And Carrie, sorry.
Sorry, I think I left my hand up. I would say that if it's or, then we shouldn't have the and or.
Okay, because I was like, if they do both, they're not going to be penalized for doing more than one of them.
Right, so if it's or, then I think it should say as or. I'm sorry, I'm being very
To
technical.
simplify it.
Yes.
I agree. I think it's a little confusing the other way.
Done. On the slide that I use. Okay, so
I might-
don't mind me, I'm toggling back and forth.
I might even put a comma before the or, but I don't want to start a brawl here. So about Oxford commas.
Oh, well, I'd say that's tough because they've gotten rid of commas in front of ands fairly recently, so
I don't want to. I don't want to go there.
that's why. Now that I've made enough criticism of the existing to go to these, I'm trying to say from the really minor stuff too, is this clear and that it's at least it's a list and it's asterisks what historical note is versus trying to incorporate all of this within the upper requirements. I don't want to overwhelm the reader. Are people in general good with this and we can move on? Any objections to moving on? No opinions whatsoever.
The only thing I'll say is just having to
Please.
work with people who call up the office
Yes,
and they're reading through the requirements, like, do I have this right? You know, they say, do I have
Right.
this right? I would just say be as, put as much information as you can and make it in the more like a checklist. Like, does this person this, or like pick from this column, do they have this, the famous hero of New York column, do they have the anyone from this column, and so like it doesn't, you don't have to write it that way, but try to think about it, how it'll eventually be turned into a form that makes sense to people, to say like, okay, I have everything in this column, I should be given a pretty fair go at the committee when I get there, because I've done all these things and identified and explained how they meet these criteria. So, that's how I would just, as you all keep moving forward, I think it's good. You guys are really kind of hitting the points of, this is what the committee kind of had an issue with the last round or two, even though they kind of were on the guidelines. You're like, maybe this person didn't have enough of this or that. I think you guys are really hitting those items, and I'm really thankful. And I just want to make sure that you guys are also, don't leave anything out, but just spell it out, and then we'll convert it.
Okay, yes, because now this would be, since it's must, and then it's 1, 2, 3. But then you're right, 2 would have an A, B, or C choice. And that's why there's an or, and Carrie's correct.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes, but that
and
clarifies, it's choose.
sorry to interrupt.
No problem.
And it's probably easier for the reader if you do it as provisions A, B, and C within it, or bullet points to make that, you know, be a person, A, of great significance to New York City, B, a key person, or C, brought about significant changes. So that it's
Yeah.
very clear
Yeah.
Yes,
within
Think-
number 2.
Think about every health questionnaire you ever taken where it's like, do you have a history of this? No. History of this? No. And then once you have that one yes checkbox, it's like, well, you know.
yeah, no, and keep in mind that we're looking at different portions of this application, but at the end, it's going to be looking at the whole thing together in the questionnaire format. So you will get to revisit all of these things within the context of the whole document. So don't think these are flying by and you'll never see them again. Poor Lucian. Okay, then if there's consensus, let's move on to the next item, which I'm sure is going to be very exciting. This is a portion of the application, and this is what exists, hence the existing. And they call it additional considerations for all applications. There's a lot to read. The board may at its discretion, these aren't numbered, they're bullets. The board may at its discretion grant a naming where the applicant sets forth a rationale that does not clearly fall in any of the 3 categories above, which are the 3 that we've looked at, including individuals, but demonstrates extraordinary and highly acclaimed accomplishment or involvement for the public good linked to our district and a suggested street proposed for co-naming. Next bullet. An application, so that's a big slush that allows. Next bullet, an application of an individual, organization, or an historic event that has already received a street code naming within the city of New York is strongly discouraged from applying to the committee. Next bullet, an application for an individual, organization, or historic event that has already been named on a public memorial or qualifies to be named on a public memorial within our district is also discouraged. Next bullet, applicants must disclose any other street code naming or other memorial in a public area of New York City. Next bullet, the board may deny approval of an application in its sole discretion, even if a committee approves it. If an application is denied by the committee or the board, the original applicant may not reapply on behalf of the prospective honoree for 3 years from the date of that denial. And final bullet, each application will be considered on its own merit. Now you'll get to see what I did to it. You go to the next slide. This one is more rewriting and reorganization than changing content, so I'll try to point out where the changes are. But anyway, first bullet. And so if you think it should be numbered versus bulleted, whatever you think. The board may, at its discretion, grant a naming that is not clearly to fall into one of the 3 categories, if the applicant can provide a strong argument, made that clear, that the proposed honoree had an extraordinary and highly acclaimed accomplishment or involvement for the public good linked to our district and the suggested street proposed for co-naming. This just gave a little bit of a word here and there for clarity. Otherwise, it's unchanged. Second bullet, an application for an individual, organization, or an historic event that has already received a street co-naming within the city of New York, or has already been named on or qualified to be named on a public memorial within our district is strongly discouraged. Here 2 were combined. So again, nothing as new is added, it was simply simplified. Next bullet, the board may deny approval of an application even if the committee approves it. So that was no change. Next bullet, if an application is denied by the committee or the board, an application for that prospective honoree, here's the change, will not be considered again within at least 3 years from the date of denial. Again, so it doesn't matter who made the application. It has to do with who is being proposed for honoree. So again, if you and a friend, colleague, relative submit under one person's name and it's rejected, the other person can't come forward and say, oh, here's the same thing all over again, but I'm a different applicant. This was to just say, you know what, we rated the honoree. And so it isn't going to change. We want 3 years. And then the final one, there's no change on. Each application will be considered on its own merit. So Jess, if you'd like to take on those changes.
Yeah, so on the first bullet, it might be helpful to know how things play out under the current rules, but doesn't it sort of render the other requirements sort of meaningless if you can just apply anyway and it's at the board's discretion? Like, I'm just wondering if this provides an incentive for basically everyone to apply and just see how it goes. Is that it?
Other people, yeah, no, because for me, this can be the kind of that slush area of things that might have been missed. For instance, it wasn't that long ago that we added historic places or activities. And how did the other group completely overlook that whole category? But, you know, who knows? So this, I think, was originally intended to pick up some of those things where an unusual case comes up. For instance, it could be somebody who does something great for New York, but doesn't meet the requirements of an individual, and they may not live here.
Yeah, I hear that.
They may not have been in this district, but there were a whole lot of benefits to the people in this district simply by being members of the human race. There are these things that can be very unusual, and I think it was intended to kind of sweep in those.
Okay, and this might be a question for Lucian, but like under the current rules, are there a lot of people coming to us and saying, well, I might not meet the requirements, but I have a really strong argument? Like, is this something that people are going to rely on often?
No, I usually, when people don't seem to be really kind of based in their plans to do a lot of research and organizing, which this process requires, then I try to talk them out of it.
Okay,
Because
that's good.
you know, if you kind of present half a loaf, they're going to say no, and the council member is not going to do anything for you. So don't even embark on this process unless you are willing to see every part of it through. So I've advised people to really think about how much time they have available to dedicate to this.
Okay, that makes me feel better.
Yes, well, when you see the next portion, you'll also get more relieved. There's a lot of work the applicant has to do.
Yeah. Can I ask one more question?
You can talk.
On the second to last one, I'm wondering,
denied?
yeah,
Oh.
I'm just wondering, I'm fine with it. I'm just wondering where that came from. Is there an issue of people getting denied and then like slightly changing it and coming back? Has that been a problem that we've encountered before?
Well, Lucian wouldn't predate me by enough. This was really from the existing. And so I'm going to guess long-term they have. Short-term, I haven't seen it, so I sort of doubt Lucian has, but if you have. I just wanted to narrow it down to it can't just be the same applicant can't reapply for 3 years, but rather really
Yeah, I
just
don't know.
honoree.
The only thing I can think of how that could be an issue. Hold on one second.
Yes, and
So
this
the only
just,
thing that the only way I can see that being an issue is, let's say someone does some historic scholarship and says, "Oh, we found the true hero of the person who kept the Con Edison steam lines from exploding, and we just found out they saved 1 million people in Lower Manhattan from getting steamed or whatever." And everyone kind of rushes to say, "Well, let's commemorate this person here. It's the corner of City Hall Park." But the first person to the punch does a really poor job. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of that where you would have kind of something discovered. It's usually the way this process works is someone comes from like a niche corner of the neighborhood, and it's, you know, it's whatever part of it, because they've either worked in some part of it and they know of this person, or they are a historian of some sort, or a, you know, a amateur historian who has like a niche interest, and so they're like, oh, how about this person, they used to do this here. We've had a tour guide say, I have no place to tell people where 5 Points was.
Mhm.
And it's such a well-known concept, but the city of New York has not marked it in any way, so that's how it usually comes. But I don't think that this would be that big of an issue unless there was some, like, somebody makes a movie about something, and then everyone, you have multiple parties trying to do it when they don't agree on something. I don't know. I don't know how to game it out.
Well, I was gonna say, as a chair, I would say that if somebody did because I've counseled students applying to highly desired university program, if it's really not a good attempt and I know it's a weak one, I will often ask them to please withdraw it, rethink it, and then resubmit it, so that there's no point in us judging it. Because the judgment is not going to be in their favor, and then it's going to put a time clock on them. So I think that is something that's flexible anyway, to say.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad idea to put a three-year cooling off period. That would certainly put a lot more pressure on the applicant to withdraw, instead of saying, all right, well, I'm going to ride it through to full board, and I think that the full board is going to overturn what the committee says or something like that. But the other side of it is, you also want to make sure that you want to communicate this to the council member that, we're not creating a process that's too onerous, because they can short circuit it. I mean, effectively, our process exists only because council members have historically said, well, I'll wait to see what the community board has said, and I'll go with what they want. But they don't have to.
Right.
And there's been times where they've disagreed with us and be like, no, I'll do it anyway, because it's, I feel it's the right thing to do. And sometimes they don't, they'll say, there's not even going to be an application. We're just going to do this because the city council liked this person. So you just, whatever you do, we just have to make sure that in the end, the council member's office feels okay with the process that we're putting together. So if
Right.
I think that when you all start getting to the final draft part of this, I'll share this with Marte's office and get some feedback, and then you should be pretty inoculated against any sort of potential bad feelings.
Yeah, so this one is not to go after the applicant, but rather to give some relief to the committee, because of the emotional draining there is on some of these, especially where there's a rejection, that they can turn around and come back over and over again would be
right.
A lot for the committee members to handle. On the other hand, I am not saying don't give feedback along the way to something that's not going to be positive, to let them have the best application possible.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, as long as it seems like it's engineered to make sure that everyone's working in good faith. Then I think it's a fine thing.
And that is back in attendees.
Yeah,
Okay, so
go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, any other comments about
I was just
anything
going
in
to
these
say, for
processes?
people who haven't had to reject applicants, it can be very difficult to say no, and sometimes you feel just awful, but because of criteria that we have, that isn't, that we just had from being on the board for years, sometimes you just have to say no, and it just feels really awful. So this is great, putting in place very specific means of applying. And then if they don't meet those, then we don't have to feel as bad as we do sometimes.
Well, right, in a 3-year cooling off period, if something is very, very nice person, but they're probably not going to overall suit the naming process, 3-year gap would be a good thing to have. Assuming you've given people the opportunity to make the strongest application possible for the honoree they want.
Right.
Betty,
And
can I
Detta?
ask you a question
Well,
about that?
Mitch, and then Detta, I recognize you when Mitch is done.
No, I'll let you go
I'm
first.
comfortable waiting.
You sure, Detta?
Yes.
Okay. Just about the 3-year waiting period. I mean, I see both points. I was just wondering, by keeping that in, but if, like you said, if somebody fills out an application and maybe they don't, it's like a grant writing, they don't really kind of do it right through no malicious means the first time, could there be like a one time where they can like redo it instead of having a cold, like 3-year, almost like an immigration type of 3-year like blanket that you can't reapply, something where there's room for a reason.
There is, because they don't have to go for the denial. They
I'm sorry?
they can withdraw their application when they
No,
get
but
an
once,
assessment.
if it's denied and then they find out like yeah, maybe I should have done that differently or something like that,
So
maybe
they
like
regret their decision that when they
an
were
appeal.
advised to deny, when they
I'm
were,
sorry?
when they were asked to withdraw, they didn't, and now they regret it.
Like an appeal type, like at least one appeal so it's, the spirit of the 3-year rule is there, but you're at least giving like one appeal on good faith,
But the
Is-
appeal would be going to the same body.
but I'm saying appeal like they would kind of redo it within the appeal. They would maybe fix 1 or 2 errors. I agree in the spirit of the 3-year thing. I just hate when things are just black, like cut and dry, because so many times there are things that with good intentions that get caught up in these bureaucratic
Can I
things.
just
So
interject something here?
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think,
please.
Mitch, what Betty is saying is that if the committee asks them to withdraw and explains to them why we're asking them to withdraw, that more than likely, we're telling them that more than likely their application will not be approved, that gives them the opportunity to withdraw, correct
Okay.
whatever needs to be corrected or get more
Strengthen it.
information.
okay,
come
Betty,
back.
then I should have realized, I should have understood that better the first time. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's fine. No, I agree with giving feedback to help people strengthen their effort. But then drawing a line with, if they make the choice to proceed anyway,
Yeah.
then there needs to be kind of a cooling period.
All right,
It
thank
is
you.
difficult. Lucian, if you have something to say before Detta, just,
Yeah, I think that in the resolution we can certainly put something in there saying that the office and will remind the committee that we have to work as collaboratively as we can with the applicant if they have something that could be passable based on the merits, but they still need to add this or that 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 the time should be given for them to complete their application if it's not completely up to snuff. Not to say like sniff at it and say 3 years like the soup Nazi, like
Right.
no soup for you, come back 1 year. But we can say like, okay, well you're almost there. We need this, and this, and maybe next month you give it to us, and then we'll give you a vote.
That sounds great.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what you're looking for. So
Yes.
yeah, no, I've done that before with grants and admissions processes. So I understand what you're saying, and Detta, you've been waiting.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, I'm not sure if it showed that I was on the call because I was having connection issues. So I could hear most of the call, but I couldn't unmute myself or turn my camera on or anything. Anyway, I think there's such a limited number of spots for co-naming. So I'm very comfortable with everything that's been suggested here in the meeting. I was comfortable even with a 50-year waiting period after a death, because there's a lot of other ways where somebody could be honored. They could a park bench or a street bench or a street tree, or even the protection around a street tree. You can put a plaque on that. There's so many different ways, creative ways, where somebody could honor somebody. And co-naming, there's just such a limited amount of spots for it. So I think it's really good to have the criteria be clear, but also be quite stringent and quite competitive, because it's It's like you're competing for a really limited resource.
Okay, thank you. Then if we're done with this one, you ready to take on another one? I want to make sure there's enough time, and there is. Items to be submitted. This is really long. But the first, because there are 4 items, the first one here is really about a petition. And that's one of the changes that I'm going to suggest we get rid of petitions. But for those who recall, when COVID broke out, the first thing we had to do with stopping or slowing or making changes to co-naming was people couldn't knock on doors to get petitions signed anyway. I can tell you in buildings like mine, it wouldn't be allowed anyhow, which also further would limit. This can be a very difficult task in the whole petition thing. And that is going to be one of the biggest changes made to the suggested. But anyway, petitions for community support, which is the whole point of this, for the co-naming proposal. And then they talk about what has to be included. One is the honoree's name, address, and a succinct yet detailed outline indicating why the honoree should be bestowed the honor of the street co-named for them. And B, include a brief biological description, which isn't quite true if it's a historical event, but anyway, such as the date and location of birth if it's an individual, and when the individual, organization, or historic event place became part of the community, the connection between the co-named street and the honoree, and why they should be memorialized with the street co-naming. Keep in mind that prospective honorees should have a minimum of 20 years of community involvement for individuals and 30 years for organizations as stated in the guidelines. This is an example to me of throwing in too much stuff. But anyway, 2, the total number of residences and businesses located on the block to be co-named. This is why I point out, think corner versus block, and it'll make more sense to you. The total number of residences and businesses located on the block to be co-named, as well as a 1-block radius going east, west, north, and south of that location. Now the corner becomes real critical for that. 3, a minimum of 75% of the total amount of potential signatures of residences and/or business people on those affected blocks, including their building address. For example, a petition from a 1-block radius with 153 units, businesses, should require a minimum of 115 signatures of support. And number 4, letters or emails of support are strongly encouraged and must contain the New York City address and a specific reason for the support, for how a co-name for the nominee is of long-term importance, as well as why this block is the most appropriate. This has lots of problems with it that I tried to take on, and that's all point out to you here. The emails and letters of support are kind of what we're going to rely on instead of a petition because of all the problems with petitioning. On the other hand, notice this petition, somebody just signed it. They didn't have to have any knowledge whatsoever of what was going on. They just asked for a signature, they gave it. When they did a letter or an email, they had to put down a reasoning for why they agreed and more information about the person. So the level of what was requested, again, was not consistent among the different methods. So if you go to the next one, see what I came up with and what you should think about and respond to. Items proposed. Number 1, information about the proposed honoree. And so I attempt to look at all honorees, which must include a succinct yet detailed description of the event or the person's or the organization's achievements and significance over time that warrants street co-naming. The prospective honorees must meet the criteria stated in the guidelines. B, and that's just a reminder to them. B, the proposed honoree's name and justification of the importance and value to our district, as well as why the proposed street location is appropriate. So again, it was divided into 2 parts. 1, justify the honoree. 2, justify the importance to our district and this particular location for co-naming. 2, a total, this goes back to now looking at, well, council has to come up with the number of residences and businesses located in a 1 block radius of the block / corner to be co-named. Because in reality is a corner and it's just one of the quadrants. 3, the letters or emails of support from a minimum of 75% of the residents, so I didn't change that, residents and or businesses in a 1 block radius, which is defined down here, to be received at our community office, and each must include the adult supporters building address and the specific reasons for their support, including the nominee's long-term importance and why this block is the most appropriate. So keep in mind the things that were changed are that we're going to letters and emails, so that didn't change, but we're getting rid of the petition. These letters and emails must be received in the office, not just written. Now, I don't care if the nominee collects them and hand delivers them to the office, packages them, and I don't care how they get there. But the fact is they have to be in the office. And including the nominee's long-term importance, yes. So the asterisk was for 75% of a 1 block radius and gives the same example as before. 153 units would require 115 emails or letters of support from businesses and or residents representing different addresses. Why? Because I really don't want 5 from the same family. And those things weren't specified before. Another thing to look at, it include adult supporters building address. Can children be supporters and sign? Or should there be some kind of nebulous, at least it's in adults? These were the issues that I looked at and thought, could I just get a whole bunch of family members in one location? Does there need to be a division between businesses and residences to show both groups are represented? I mean, this one has the most things for you to think about, and I really had no answers to. Yeah, Pat.
I'm sorry, I just totally didn't understand what you were saying. Do you mean that a letter should come from one apartment, one family, as opposed to 5 members of that family in the same
If you're
apartment?
going to count percents, yes, that shouldn't count as 5 letters.
Okay, so basically what I'm saying, you want one apartment, one family unit can send.
Or one business, yes.
Or one business, okay, okay, you lost me for a minute there.
Yeah, because I didn't want to get down to, you have one group that really wants it, and so they kind of speak for the whole neighborhood because
Right,
they get all their friends and family members to sign on for them.
I agree with you.
Yeah,
And,
Justine?
depending on who the person is, there may be businesses or residents who totally disagree with naming their street after, or co-naming their street after that individual.
Well, and that's the issue. There have been so many articles on this, and I can tell you there was one New York Times a while ago, maybe 5 years ago, and they talked to city council members who routinely vote no, and it's their policy. They vote no on every application that comes forward. And the comment was, for every one person who signs, I get 25 very angry letters that come in who are completely in opposition to it. And it is just a no-win situation. So I have a policy of no. Which I thought was kind of interesting to hear someone who has that kind of history that can give those kinds of numbers. But anyway, Justine.
Thanks so much. No, that's really interesting to hear what you just said about the back and forth with the people. Because what I was going to say was I like the idea of it being businesses as well as residential. So if it's on the corner and you have a building that's, got 150 units or 200 units or 500 units, that counts as one building or one block, right? And then across the street,
No, that counts, if it has 150 units within that building, it counts as 150
Got it.
units.
And then with the businesses, I think it makes sense to have them weigh in, but I don't think either the individuals or the businesses should have more weight than the other. I think it should just be one per thing. I think that's a kind of a cool way to do it, because sometimes the businesses have been there for a really long time. Sometimes they're fly by night. They might not have any opinion. So And then again, the residents too, people, if it's rental building or whatever, and there's a lot of turnover, they're not gonna have a clue of what's going on. But I think this is pretty good.
Well, that raises the whole issue of, do only the people in one block make it, be those to weigh in? What about the rest of the community? What about the people who use signs for wayfinding?
Well, because the sign has both, doesn't it? What I've seen is you've got like, Fifth Avenue, and then you've got Joe Smith Way or something for the
I
block.
can tell you as somebody who travels, that is, one, it's hard for me to see from being down low in a scooter. But two, it's also incredibly difficult to figure out what the name of the street really is, especially when the name of the street falls off. And if you look around FIDI for a street name on a street corner, they're not there.
Yeah.
Then you have these other alternative names that really aren't real anything. And from a wayfinding purpose, it's confusing.
With the street co-naming though, the street's name doesn't change. It just has a second name. I'm asking, not saying.
Technically,
Okay.
that's true. But if the sign falls off, the sign falls off.
Yeah.
If you're a tourist that doesn't understand the color coding, they really don't know. I mean, why is this name so-and-so way or so-and-so place here if that's not its name?
Mm-hmm.
The whole concept of co-naming isn't something that comes with your tourist information.
Right, that's true, but that doesn't sway me one way or the other. And wayfinding, I would go like
Actually, it
Google
does.
Maps if the street name itself still shows as Google Maps or on the map. Well, Google Maps is updated regularly, allegedly, versus a paper map. But
But then you need a smartphone that you travel with.
yeah, yes, you do.
And I don't use my hands I walk with my
Right,
hands.
that's fair. You need your hands. Yeah, that makes sense. No, which is why that I like the idea that it's possible, but you have to jump through these hoops. Right? I mean, that's what this is. These are hoops you have to jump through.
Yes, and you have to realize who isn't included. So Pat, you can take this on too
Yeah,
with
go ahead.
anybody who does not live within one block gets to have no weigh in whatsoever, even though they may use the street more than the people who live on it, who of course know the address because they live there. So the stakeholder pool is very, very small, and it is not really balanced between businesses and individuals, although there's some attempt to at least include them.
Well, I think if the weight is per unit, and Pat, just jump in and interrupt me. I think if the weight is per unit, I think that's balanced enough. And then the question of adult, anybody who's 18 or older, that's an adult, so that's fine to
That's what
me.
I want to say, yeah.
So you would leave adult in?
I
Yeah.
think, yeah, because adult
Yeah.
would be defined to me as 18 or older. You can vote, you can make opinions. If there is a high school push for something that's going on, they can get their adult, family members involved as the signatories. Doesn't mean they have to have an adult be the supporter, and then they can go and do it. So I don't think you're cutting anybody out, and you're making sure that it's responsibly done. Because that sounds like this is not something we want to do every day. And if people can jump through these hoops and get the 75%, it means there's a lot of support for it. But now I'm shutting up. Thank you.
Yes, and actually, I think the letters and or emails in some ways would be as easy or easier because you're simply asking someone. And again, if you look at the initiatives done by advocacy groups, they often give a pre-printed information to use to fulfill this other, such as explaining who this person is, why they're important to you. It doesn't mean they can't get assistance like they do on a petition.
You've got someone else's hands raised. Carrie's hand is raised, but I'm going to give you, I think you're going to get, I don't know if it's pushback or just contribution from folks who've lived here a long time who've asked for street co-naming stuff. And I don't know whether they'll like it or not like it. I'm not saying anything. I think this is fair and reasonable and clearer than what you showed on the last slide.
Yeah, the
Thank
numbers
you.
and things didn't change, and that's specifically why I didn't change from the existing. But anyway, Pat, did you still have something to say? So
No,
you
it's
put your
okay.
hand down.
In the conversation with Justine, you kind of covered it.
Great. Then Carrie, if you'd like to go.
It's just a point of information. I don't know the answer. How long do street co-namings stay in effect? Is there
Forever.
forever?
The comments made in the newspaper, yeah, there is no expiration, and I think when and if there will be a resolution that goes with this, I would ask them to consider changing legislation to modify this, to either have to reapply or just plain sunset after some period of time. Because otherwise, 100 years, 200 years from now, there'd be nothing. What they said in the New York Times articles, did some of the council people, was, well, but if a sign falls down, then they just don't replace it. And nobody thinks to do anything about it. So I guess there is kind of in a passive aggressive way that it's handled, but Lucian, you'll be more enlightened.
Betty, can I ask you something about
Wait,
that?
no, let Lucian speak first.
I'm sorry, sure.
I was raising my hand just to speak after this part. I think that's probably you in your research know better about the replacement of signs than I do. I've never had to explore that before, but the DOT has to engage its own sign office, and I don't think it's a high priority for them. If the sign is damaged or destroyed or lost or stolen, it would take an act by a council member to get them to do that, and that's partially why they do this twice a year, because they have to probably give an order to the sign department of DOT to run through special custom signs. But one thing I did want to say was, I think it'd be good to specify how they should calculate the number of households, and how to, is it on a block? Is it the north side of the block, the south side of the block, halfway through the block? The reason why I say that is it could be just an estimate. I think that this is a tough thing for lay people to do. This, one can look up a census block, and right now it's pretty accurate, meaning the 2020 census was just certified, relatively speaking. But it's still, it's still not an exact science. So, getting down to the number of what 75% of the households and businesses in an area that's abutting a sign, is it the four corners surrounding the sign? I think there's a lot of interpretation there. So you can either be vague and just say, like, have the person define the area and then estimate the number of households or units, and then say 75% of that, and just make sure the committee's instructed not to be like super persnickety about it. But I can see that as being something where, like, if you have one person who's opposed, let's say, and the committee's in favor, and the person seizes on, like, well, this is a technicality that I'm going to really crank on because I don't like this idea. That's not really fair to the person who's trying to, like, essentially split atoms to do this, when they may not be, a map person or a demographer. So it's a peak point that I think could be lessened, because I think it's more about the substance of the request, and rather than the accurately calculating the number of households that need to be represented in canvassing. So that's one thing I just wanted, if there's a way to keep the threshold element, but making it a little simpler for both the committee and the applicant to kind of figure out what the level is that it needs to be done.
Okay, yeah, it may make more sense rather than even talking about block at all, but to talk about corner. Because then it's much clearer when you talk about a block east, a block north, a block south, block west of that corner. It becomes clearer, and then it would be both sides of the street for
May I
those
make
particular
a-
blocks.
Oh, sorry. May I
No,
make a
please.
suggestion?
Yes.
Maybe, so the first bullet is really information about the honoree, right? And the second one, or the second two, are really go to a substantiation of community support, right? So both of those are really related to support and, support in the neighborhood or around the corner. So what if those two were, they go together under that same rubric.
Wait,
right?
one and two,
Two and
or
three.
A and B?
2 and 3.
Two
So
and three.
yeah, so number one, that bullet, that first paragraph is really about the honoree, right? Justification
Yes.
based on information about the honoree. And the second two are really about justification of, substantiation
just-
of support.
Yeah, 2 is just information.
Right, but they go together because the one tells how the other gets calculated.
It's the basis of the calculation in 3.
Right, so it's really substantiate, support for this effort by doing these things. Take the total number of residents and show that you have 75% support through letters and emails, right? So I
As
think-
given in number 2, of those given in number 2, yes.
Right, exactly. So I think it could be organized a little differently to make it clear that the point of 2 and 3 is to show significant support for the effort. So
Yeah,
how do
no,
you
it-
show
it would make-
support is to do, tally up the number and then provide letters and emails from 75% of them.
Yeah, and going on a case by case, be like, this is a corner where it's all office buildings, so they canvassed a couple ground floor businesses and maybe were able to get one upper floor tenant, but there's no really any residents around. Is that that's a different story than in Battery Park City, where you may have like a couple high density residential buildings, and so I think that I think Carrie's right that you just say like, well, show what you got, and then based on where you're asking, the committee can infer whether that is significant or not, and they can make that argument.
I'm not actually, I'm sorry, Alicia, I'm not trying to say that we should change the standard. I'm just
No, it's-
saying it would be clearer if we explained why we were asking them to
Right.
count households, residents, et cetera. That there's a reason for it. It's not just an exercise in census taking or cartology. There's an effort to show support. And in
Yes,
order
no,
to do
2
that,
would be
you've
a show
gotta
of
say, yeah,
Yeah, no, you're right. So 2 would be show of support, and then what currently is 2 would be 2A, and what is currently 3 would be 2B.
right, exactly. So it puts it in context so that that's why they're doing the count in the first place.
It's more parallel to the way number 1 was written.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That would be a lot clearer, but I will also link that A and that B together with it. The 75% of the businesses is as shown in A.
Right. I mean, the threshold is 75% support based on the count of residents and businesses within the radius of the corner. Is that right?
Yes. And again, I'll put somewhere in there, Lucian, you're correct with they have to be somewhat estimates, because I can tell you in my building, if they went to anything formal, looking at old real estate dealings or anything else, if they gave the number of units, that's not the number of units in the building today, because there have been a lot of combined units.
Also, people have units that don't live in the units all the time. And the last point I'll make is, having tried to canvass in Lower Manhattan, and just hearing from the census enumerators, it is quite impossible to get into any of these buildings to petition. So you would have to sit on the street and engage people as they're walking. In Lower Manhattan, people are essentially trained to not engage with people talking to them on the street. So it's really, really going to be very difficult to hit these. And I just really want to make that, I want to paint that picture that this is almost going to be an impossible thing.
Well, that's why I
hit
looked
that
at this.
75% of units.
Well, that's why I looked at it, do we want, and people to really think about, do you want a balance of businesses and residents? Are going to be 100% residents that sign? Keeping in mind, a business in some ways is easier for the office to check the address and say, oh, that is a business. A residence, there's really no way of verifying that information. Not that I think people are necessarily lying, but we want to make it clear to the office what we really expect that's realistic.
Yeah. I mean, even when people are petitioning to get someone on the ballot, like you could check that against a voter file. We don't have that and we won't do that. So, it's in the end, I'm not thrilled with the name, this part of the process.
I know.
I get why it exists, but I think it's like where I live in Upper Manhattan, it's far easier to get in almost any building and start knocking on doors, though, more recently people will call the cops. But in Lower Manhattan, it's very, very difficult, especially with newer construction building conversions and the like. You'll have a doorman who just will not let you in, or there's just no way to get in without getting buzzed in.
Well, and that's why I want people to really think about this one. We'll come back to it. So I'll let these other hands, speak their piece, but I don't think we can really reach a consensus on this because people are going to need to step back and think, what really does make sense and what would I be satisfied with as a show of support?
And Betty, just a time check for you.
Yes, and I was going to say, we only have about another 5 or so minutes, 5 to 8 minutes at most, because we need to be done by 7:20 because Lucian needs time to wind down this film to start setting up for quality of life so they can really get going at 7:30. So keep it short and no, we're going to come back to this week. We kind of have to, with you thinking about it in the interim. So Mitch, Pat, and Detta.
Hi, Betty. Just wanted to revisit, you were talking about the perpetuity thing, and I understand your point. The same reason why I thought 50 years might have been, and the consensus was it was probably too long. If somebody needs to be passed away for at least 20 years, and then whatever figure you might feel as an opinion of putting on, of revisiting, there might not be any family members or members of the community that might be around 50, 75, or whatever many years later. So I would think that.
But is that a good measure of it being a worthwhile co-name, that their family members have to be there?
No, they don't have to be there. But I'm saying when time passes, history gets rewritten. What I would like to suggest is that just like we do sometimes with statues now, when we find out was somebody that they thought was a hero was like a Nazi war criminal or a Confederate slave-owning war general, and then it's revisited by the community council and it's been taken down. The same thing could apply to something like this if other historical facts come out which belie what was thought originally. But when you're talking about waiting 40, 50, 60, 70 years and having to reapply, I think sometimes that might be impractical, although I understand your point.
Yeah, no, and again, that would be for the final resolution to ask city council to consider,
Okay.
to put
Thank
some
you.
guidelines on. Pat and Detta?
Just two
Pat,
things.
you're holding yourself up.
Oh, sorry. Two things. Having worked the census 10 years ago, I completely agree with Lucian. You cannot get into any of these buildings. It was the most ridiculous task to try to do that. That's number one. And number two, in terms of what the block is, east, west, north, south, a picture is worth 1,000 words. If we just put a little sketch in there showing what the area that we're indicating that we want people to canvass for the letters, I think that would be the easiest thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think graphics always do a good job. But again, I want people to really seriously think about what kind of show of support in your mind is realistic and satisfactory, because that's what we're going to have to revisit because it is such a difficult topic. And Detta?
Yeah, I mean, co-naming is problematic because there aren't enough spots for everybody who would want them, and they create a lot of wayfinding problems. And ideally, the whole issue of co-naming would be looked at to see if this is even a good way to honor somebody. And maybe
But it's law too, so
right,
we have
I
to,
understand that, but I'm just saying that given that in a way we want to discourage co-naming and really only have it be for really, really big names. So I'm happy like making it 75% of all the residences and businesses in within a block on both sides of the street within a corner. Even though that would be a very hard, but the thing is the people we want to be on these signs would be a name that's big enough where if somebody sets up a little table and flyer on the street where people are going to stop and say, oh, really, that person? Because that's really what we're looking for. We are looking to limit this to really sort of well-known people, events, institutions. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents, that I'm okay with making it very stringent, including the 75%.
Okay, thanks. And also, when people are thinking during this next month, well, actually, it's only a couple of weeks before we meet again. And we may or may not revisit this topic, depends how many other things we have to do. But what else might be those questionable things, such as when people have asked for streets in like the civic center where you don't have residences? I mean, who signs? They're not exactly businesses either. They're government buildings. So to think of those things very broadly when you're thinking of support, because I think this is going to be something that really has to be grappled with more, this very specific area.
Just Lucian mentioned Battery Park City. Is that even part of things, or is that different rules?
You know, all the neighborhoods are the same. The question is, how do we make sure they're covered for the applicant who chooses?
Oh, no, I didn't know
Any
if
corner.
since Battery Park
Names
City
are
is
still
land lease
governed.
from the state, I didn't know if it even has
No,
code naming.
it's New York City. It would meet New York City rules for code naming.
Okay.
Yes. Well, then I will, because I want to, in the name of, oh, I have to show you one thing. Jess, if you go to the end, I'm going to cut a whole bunch of slides. I wanted you to see, but go to the very last slide. Oh, that will go back on. That one is kind of funny. This actually, I took out this tweet because you'll notice Polly Trottenberg is one of the followers of this one. And The Onion is, people who know it, is humorous. So it is very tongue in cheek. But you look at what they do for the walk sign. Just a green good luck. And that's kind of what it's getting to be like in New York City, which is really very sad. Rather than the pedestrian signal. But anyway. If you go two more, it's the end one, only because I love this one. This is, to me, fascinating, but also kind of sad. This, if you look at these tweets, is actually a moving dragon. And it's amazing to watch it flying through the sky. It is made up of 1,000 drones. This is over in St. Petersburg, a stadium. So it's in Russia. And these, very sadly, are the same drones they're using as kamikazes in the Ukraine and destroying buildings. But it's absolutely beautiful to see this moving dragon and watch the head moving and watching it flying through space. This is a little film if you look it up under Twitter. And you could look it up under Dr. Kash Sarhanda, who I believe is actually from Great Britain. But he uses his Twitter name is his own name. And then you can see the original of this and watch this dragon moving. It's quite a little video to watch. But anyway, for those of you who like dragons like I do, it's fascinating. So thank you all, and see you again pretty soon, because we meet on the 1st of November. It's a Tuesday night. Thank you, and I'll call this to a close and let Pat get ready for, and Lucian get ready for the next one.
So
Thank you.
do we need to
Yeah,
sign
sure.
out? Do we need to exit this meeting first and then sign in on the next one?
You're all
No,
welcome
you
to
could
stay for the
stay.
next meeting. Quality of life.
Yeah,
Sorry.
stay. Don't go anywhere. You're in the right place. I'll drop a new link, or you can click the old link and just switch it to quality of life. But I am going to, what I usually do. Oh wait, we cut the recording. Thank you, Betty.
Yes.
Actually going to talk with hopefully some of our police officers